How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Shifting Lanes. My name is Hanson, and for this video, I'm standing right in front of the 2024 Alfa Romeo Tonale Veloce E all-wheel drive. This is a plug-in hybrid. It's a powerful subcompact crossover, and it has a beautiful Italian design. But there's just some things that's off about it, and I want to share my thoughts with you as I share my personal ratings on 5 categories: the exterior, interior, the technology, the power, and the driving experience, so that you have a better idea before you buy. So if you want to jump to any of those sections, check out the chapters along the video. With that said, let's get this review started with the outside first. The subcompact crossover segment is filled with weird and quirky designs, boring designs, and some really edgy ones like the Toyota CHR. I don't think beautiful is a typical description of a subcompact crossover, and I think the Tonale is the first one that deserves that word. This is an all-new vehicle from Alfa Romeo. This adds to their existing lineup of the Alfa Romeo Giulia and the Stelvio, rounding out the family of beautiful Italian designs. I've reviewed those cars before, so if you want to check out the links in the description box, go check it out. This Tonale shares the same platform as the Dodge Hornet, but this one is clearly the better looking one. Up front, they have the Alfa Romeo corporate shield grille. This is known as the V Scudetto grille. Scudetto means little shield, and this has been a design mainstay in all Alfa Romeo cars, and I think it looks good in this Tonale. Now, of course, they have unique names for different features around the car as well. For example, the headlights is called the Trilobo headlights or the Trilobo headlights. This is a throwback to the old Alfa Romeo SZ and the Proteo concept car. The painted sections of the front bumper have a very sculpted appearance, and it gives the car a more luxurious feel while maintaining the same DNA as the rest of the Alfa Romeo lineup. I like how they've cleverly integrated these park distance control sensors, or what they call park sense, pretty well into the dark sections of the grille. From the side, the Tonale doesn't look as impressive as the front, but it still has the very sporty aspirations. For example, it has the big 19-inch 5-hole design wheel and the racy red calipers for the front and rear. The wheel arches and the rocker panel are painted in this gloss black finish. I personally prefer these to be color matched, just like the Stelvio, to give it a more luxury vibe and to also differentiate it from the Dodge Hornet because they have the same color scheme. And since this is a plug-in hybrid, you have your charging port door on this side. You could tell because of this handy reference here with the snake and the plug for its head. And when you look down here, you have your J1772 plug. This is for your level 1 or level 2 charger. This is your AC port, essentially. So you can't take this to a level 3 or a DC fast charging station because they have a different charging cable. And if you step back, the windows have a really nice shape to it, and it gives this car a coupe-like design, though the back door has this pretty awful window bump out, and I am not a fan of this because when your passengers will open the door, they are going to graze their chest with this design feature. And I think this is the first example in this car where the form takes precedent over the function in a nonsensical way, and there's more to be found inside. At the rear, the Trilobo light design is still there, and this also sports the continuous light bar that spans the entire width of the car. This is a very contemporary design, and you see a lot of cars doing this right now. Overall, this is a very attractive subcompact crossover and looks great in this Alfa Rosso premium color. I'll give this one a rating of 9 out of 10 for the exterior. I think this segment is full of cars that look wonky, and I think Alfa Romeo did an awesome job with the Tonale. Let me know what you think of the exterior design in the comments below. Inside, the Tonale has some great looks just like the outside, and starting with the steering wheel, this has nice materials and grip positions. This has a flat bottom, and the start button nested inside the wheel gives this a very racy design. And the paddle shifters here give it a high-end race car vibe, but it is hilariously and probably inappropriately big for this subcompact crossover. The paddles feel very high quality. They're made of aluminum, but it's so large that sometimes they'll just get in the way of using the turn signals and the stalks. The dual screens look pretty good inside with the upright tablet style 10.25-inch infotainment display, and then you have the 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, which Alfa calls the canocchiale, which translates to telescope. They have to have a name for everything, and I'll talk more about the performance of these two screens in the next section. And then again, there's some elements of cheaper looking plastics that take away the luxury appeal, but they're very limited. For example, the top of the instrument hood, it's made of these hard plastics with large visible grain on it, and also elements of the door cards as well. And there's also a lot of carryover design and shapes from the Dodge Hornet. And just knowing that there's a very close clone to this Tonale, albeit with less nice materials, takes away the Italian uniqueness of this car. The use of physical buttons and knobs is a good design call, but given that this is a small car and space is at a premium, they have moved some of the nice to have buttons like the heated steering wheel and the heated seats up into the infotainment system. If that seems inconvenient, don't worry about it, because I could show you a trick for the infotainment to make it a little bit easier. For the rest of the interior, this car does a pretty good job providing decent space given the subcompact nature. The second row legroom is not bad at all at 38 inches, and headroom is at 38.2 inches. Your 6-foot passengers may not have to tilt their necks to be able to sit inside, but the smallness of it does creep in some areas. For example, your left foot might not be as comfortable for long drives because your foot starts to encroach on the same space claim as the bodywork itself. And when you look in the rearview mirror, the visibility does get pretty poor as the headrests block the already small window. And then the storage areas are pretty limited, just like everything else in this segment. The armrest storage here is hilariously small. As for cargo volume, it's not that bad at 23 cubic feet behind the second row. Here I have my 30-liter backpack with all of my filming gear just for a frame of reference. And I like how there is a pass-through for the second row here that you can open from the inside or the outside. Then when you fold the second row down, this will give you up to 51 cubic feet of space behind the first row. So cargo space wise, this is somewhat still of a utilitarian car. So interior wise, I'll give this a rating of 8 out of 10. I think the Tonale's interior design looks sharp and stylish. Perhaps too much at the expense of functionality, but I think anyone that hops in here will be impressed with the design. Now let's move on to the technology. The infotainment screen is a sharp looking display, and I'm a bit surprised that given how overly stylized some of the elements are about this car, that this infotainment screen is just a very simple rectangular brick that's floating in front of the dash. The software is running on the Uconnect 5 with navigation. Now, if you've had a chance to play with any of the Uconnect systems in other Stellantis cars, then you know that there's a lot of customization at hand. This is basically a widget-based system, so you can add pages and customize which widgets that you want to see. There's a 2-widget configuration, there's a 3-widget layout, and then there's also a shortcuts widget where you can add up to 6 shortcuts into one single widget. And this is how you can control the heated steering wheel and also the heated seats in a more convenient way. And I can even add the surround view camera button on this little widget so that I could quickly pull up these cameras. You can also customize the ordering of the major menu items on the left-hand side just to add to that extra level of customization. The only issue I have with this display is the refresh rate when you pull up the surround view camera system, because it is a little bit on the slow side. It doesn't really give it that luxury car vibe, but everything else about it is fairly nice. I like that this has wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, and there's also Alexa built in, and there's a wireless charger and lots of USB ports and one 12-volt outlet in the center. For the digital instrument cluster, you have this 12.3-inch display, and you could toggle between 3 display types. You have this retro gauge design style, and then you have a modern design and a more minimalist look. And this being a plug-in hybrid, you have the fuel gauge on the left and then the battery gauge on the right-hand side. Personally, I think it would have been nice to swap the locations of these gauges, considering that the charging port is on the driver's side and the fuel fill door is on the other side, but oh well. This display is nice, it's crisp, and you could change between the different styles, displaying many metrics, and also your map if you want to. Annoyingly, to swap between the different displays on the cluster, you have to first press this button on the steering wheel and then use the scroll wheel to change the information on the center display. After a while, this will time out, and then when you use the scroll wheel, you're just going to change the radio station. And as for safety, there is a whole slew of features in this car, starting with autonomous emergency braking, there's lane keeping assist, there's also blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert, and also adaptive cruise control. So for technology, I'll give this a rating of 9 out of 10 because this is a really impressive set of features for a small car, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. As for the power, the Tonale only comes as a plug-in hybrid EV for the United States, and I think that is a good thing because the Dodge Hornet sort of covers the pure internal combustion engine with its 2-liter turbo. Now, powering the front wheels is a 1.3-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. They're getting smaller and smaller, and that engine is good for 180 horsepower, and that's supplemented by an electric motor for the rear axle. There's also a belt starter generator attached to the engine. Altogether, this is rated for a best-in-class 285 horsepower and 347 pound-feet of torque. When it comes to the drive mode, there is a drive mode dial here, and when you're in dynamic or dual power mode, this is how you extract as much performance as you can out of the internal combustion engine and the electric motors. In this mode, 0 to 60 can be done under 6 seconds. The default mode is normal or natural. You still have access to full power as needed, but this will balance the hybrid performance to get you the best mileage. And then there's also advanced efficiency mode, and this is for operating in pure EV mode. You could tell that the internal combustion engine just turned off when I switched to this mode. This means that the rear axle is getting power from the electric motor. So this car is going to feel more like a rear-wheel drive car. Unfortunately, you don't have the benefit of the 180 horsepower turbo engine in this mode. And if you were hoping for that quick jolt of acceleration from the electric motor, it's really not here in the Tonale. A hard press on the right pedal in this advanced efficiency mode results in just good enough around town type of acceleration, but it doesn't feel urgent. But of course, when there's a greater power demand or when you press past that noticeable detent on the accelerator, the gas engine will kick on and give you the needed help. And at that point, this will automatically change to natural. This Tonale does come with a 15.5 kilowatt hour battery, and that's good enough to give this a 30-mile pure electric range. I think that's a decent enough range for this size car, and as long as you keep juicing it up, you won't have to fill it with gas very often. This is a plug-in hybrid, and it only has a J1772 plug or the AC plug, so you can only utilize that level 1 or level 2 charger. You won't be able to take this to a DC fast charging station because that has the bigger CCS style port. Now, if you have the faster level 2 charger, you can fill this up to that 30-mile range in just 2.5 hours. With a level 1 charger, you're probably looking at about an 8-hour charging time. And just like other plug-in hybrid vehicles, there is a mode here where you could try to save as much juice as possible. There's this mode called e-save, and when you press this on, you will notice that the engine is most likely going to turn on because this is going to try and use the internal combustion engine as much as possible to preserve the electric range. As for fuel efficiency, this does pretty okay at 60 miles per gallon equivalent, and with the hybrid performance, you'll get 23 city, 29 highway, and 26 miles per gallon combined. So for long drives, there will be better hybrid solutions for you out there, but if this is a commuter car and you occasionally take it on long road trips, then you really can't beat a plug-in hybrid EV. So for power, I'll give this one an 8 out of 10 because the plug-in hybrid system makes the Tonale feel pretty powerful. And I love having the ability to go into EV mode, and it gives the Tonale at least 2 unique personalities. Finally, let's talk about the driving experience. Having great power is nice, but what is it like to drive this thing? How's the ride, the handling, the steering, etc., etc.? Starting with the ride, the Tonale feels okay for a subcompact crossover. Not supremely comfortable, but not terrible. Rough roads will get tiring after a while, and keeping the suspension at the softest setting or when you're in dynamic, you could press this button to turn it into soft. This will dull some of the sharp bounces that you get from the really bad roads, but the effect is more limited. It's a very subtle change. Handling wise, the subcompact crossover segment is not a vehicle I would consider if the fun to drive measure is really important to me. All of these cars have a clumsy, top-heavy, lethargic kind of driving dynamic, and the same sort of applies here in the Tonale, but the all-wheel drive and the dual-mode active suspension bit really improves on the car's handling. At the stiffer suspension setting, you add a hint of a more sporty feel and additional confidence in the car as you go into the corners. And the fact that you could send a good 184 pound-feet of torque just to the rear axle gives this car plenty of grip when you really give it the beans. And when you step on the car hard, you do feel a bit of torque steer, but it's completely manageable. It's not like it's going to wrangle the wheel away from your hands. The steering, on the other hand, ranges from being good to, are my wheels actually attached? The steering feel changes on various factors, but it's light in general. It's best to crank it up to the dynamic mode when you're driving on a more aggressive set of curves. Meanwhile, when you're stationary or just driving slowly, you wonder whether this wheel is actually mechanically connected to anything at all. As for the brakes, the attractive red calipers do a pretty good job bringing this 4,100 pound vehicle to a halt, and there's also pretty good pedal feel. This being a plug-in hybrid EV, I would have liked it if you could easily modify the regen braking, but that's only available if you go into dynamic mode or the e-save mode. In all of the other modes, it has predefined regen braking settings. As for the 6-speed automatic transmission, it shifts fairly quickly and it exceeded my expectations. It made using the aluminum paddle shifters worthwhile and actually somewhat useful. So for the driving experience, I'll give this a rating of 8 out of 10. These subcompact crossovers aren't the greatest driving experience. They're usually too small and too weak to be fast and quick, and also too big and tall to be nimble and fun to drive. But Alfa Romeo managed to give the Tonale an enthusiastic drivetrain with its plug-in hybrid setup, nice brakes, and also an adjustable suspension to cover the different driving conditions. So overall, I'm going to give this Alfa Romeo Tonale Veloce a rating of 8.4 out of 10. I think Alfa Romeo did a really nice job putting this thing together. It's got beautiful styling, great technology, and it's got a really awesome plug-in hybrid hardware. I think this segment is filled with a bunch of compromises, starting with the space, the styling, and also the power. I think Alfa Romeo did a really nice job putting this package together so that it's actually fun to drive and also fun to look at. Let me know what your thoughts are on this Alfa Romeo Tonale Veloce in the comments below. If you've learned something from this video, please consider hitting that like, subscribe, and that notification bell so that you can be notified the next time I make a new video. Let's wrap it up right there. My name is Hanson, and this has been the 2024 Alfa Romeo Tonale Veloce in all-wheel drive, and I'll see you in the next one.